Hello friends, every single one of us is controlled by some emotion or another. For one person, it may be intense anger. For another, it may be fear. Someone else may be controlled by jealousy, greed, insecurity, or constant anxiety. And sometimes, we don't even realize how deeply these emotions influence our lives. We believe that we are making our own decisions. We believe that we are choosing how to behave. But then, something happens. Someone says something we don't like. A situation doesn't go according to our expectations. A painful memory suddenly comes back. And almost instantly, we react. We raise our voice. We become defensive. We become afraid. We become jealous. We say things we later regret. And once the emotional storm has completely passed, we look back and ask ourselves, why did I react like that? I knew it was unnecessary. I knew I should have remained calm. Then why couldn't I control myself in that moment? This is where something very important needs to be understood. The problem is not simply that we have emotions. Emotions are a natural part of being human. The deeper problem is that we often become unconscious of what is happening inside us. An emotion begins to rise, and before awareness has a chance to appear, the old pattern takes control. It feels as though something inside us has taken over. And for a few moments, we are no longer consciously responding to life. We are simply repeating a pattern. But where does this pattern begin? It usually begins with a trigger. A negative emotional reaction rarely appears without a cause. There is usually something that activates it. And that trigger can come in many forms. Sometimes, it is a thought. You remember something that happened years ago, and suddenly, anger appears. Or you imagine something that might happen in the future, and fear begins to grow. Sometimes, the trigger is a situation. A difficult conversation, financial pressure, a disagreement, failure, uncertainty, a stressful environment, and sometimes, the trigger is another person. There may be someone whose presence alone creates tension inside you. You see them, and something changes within you. Your body becomes tense, your mind becomes defensive, your emotions begin moving before you have even consciously decided how to respond. Why? Because your mind has learned a pattern. At some point in the past, a particular experience created a strong emotional association. The mind remembered it. Then, it stored the response. And when something similar appears again, the old response can be activated automatically. This is one of the reasons our reactions can feel so powerful. We are not always responding only to what is happening right now. Sometimes, we are responding to everything that the present moment reminds us of. The present becomes connected to the past. And the past begins controlling the present. This is where the subconscious pattern becomes powerful. It does not need your conscious permission every time. It simply repeats what has been practiced before. That is why unconsciousness can become the greatest strength of an old emotional pattern. When you are unaware, the pattern can operate without being questioned. Anger appears, and you become anger. Fear appears, and you become fear. Jealousy appears, and you act from jealousy. The emotion arrives, and you immediately identify yourself with it. But there is another possibility. You can begin to notice the emotion. And the moment you notice it, something changes. Because there is now a difference between the emotion and the awareness that sees the emotion. That difference is the beginning of freedom. Think about a dark room. As long as there is no light, the darkness appears complete. But you don't have to fight the darkness. You don't have to push it away with your hands. You simply turn on a light, and darkness begins to disappear on its own. Awareness works in a similar way. You do not need to fight every emotion. You do not need to suppress anger. You do not need to force fear to disappear. And you certainly don't need to pretend that negative emotions don't exist. Instead, you learn to see them clearly. Suppose anger begins to arise. Normally, the mind immediately creates a story. He shouldn't have said that. How dare he speak to me like that? I need to teach him a lesson. And within seconds, the emotion becomes stronger. But imagine something different. The moment anger begins, you simply notice it. You notice the tension in your body. You notice your breathing becoming faster. You notice the thoughts becoming aggressive. You notice the urge to speak. And instead of immediately acting, you observe. Not suppressing, not judging, not justifying, simply observing. That small space between the emotion and the reaction is incredibly important. Because in that space, conscious choice becomes possible. And this awareness does not usually appear all at once. It develops gradually. There are different stages to this process. In the first stage, you become aware only after the reaction has completely finished. Perhaps you became angry in the afternoon, but at night, you suddenly realize, I shouldn't have reacted that way. At this point, the reaction has already happened. You were unconscious during the event, but awareness arrived afterward. This may seem insignificant, but it is actually the beginning of change, because you are starting to see what previously remained invisible. Then comes the second stage. Your awareness becomes faster. Instead of recognizing the reaction hours later, you notice it a few seconds afterward. You lose your temper, and almost immediately, you realize, something just took over me. The reaction still happened, but now, awareness is getting closer to the moment of reaction. Then comes the third stage. This is where something remarkable begins to happen. You are in the middle of an emotional experience, and suddenly, you become aware. You may be in an argument. Your voice may already be becoming louder. Your body may already be tense. Your mind may already be producing angry thoughts. And suddenly, there is a moment of clarity. You see the anger while it is happening. You are no longer completely lost inside it. You are watching it. This is a major shift, because now, the emotion and the observer are no longer completely fused. And then comes the fourth stage. Awareness becomes present at the very beginning. The emotion has only just started to rise, and you notice it immediately. You recognize the first movement, the slight irritation, the tightening of the body, the change in breathing, the thought that begins to feed the emotion. You catch the pattern before it becomes a storm. And this is where conscious choice becomes much stronger. You can respond instead of automatically reacting. You can remain silent. You can speak calmly. You can walk away. You can examine what is happening. Or you can decide that the emotion does not deserve your action. The important point is this: awareness does not necessarily mean that emotions will disappear. Anger may still arise. Fear may still arise. Sadness may still arise. Even jealousy may appear. But something fundamental has changed. You are no longer completely controlled by what appears inside you. You have begun to see it. And what you can clearly observe, you can begin to understand. What you understand, you can gradually learn to respond to differently. But there is one mistake people often make. They wait for a major emotional crisis to practice awareness. They wait until they are extremely angry. They wait until fear becomes overwhelming. They wait until a relationship is falling apart. And then, they try to become calm. But that is like trying to learn how to use a sword for the first time on an active battlefield. When the situation becomes intense, your old conditioning is already extremely powerful. That is why awareness must be practiced when life is ordinary. When nothing dramatic is happening. When the mind is relatively quiet. When there is no emergency. Start with simple moments. When you are drinking tea, just drink the tea. Notice the warmth. Notice the taste. Notice the movement of your hand. Notice the sensations in your body. And whenever you realize that the mind has wandered, gently return to what you are doing. No frustration, no criticism, just return. You can practice the same thing while walking. Feel your feet touching the ground. Notice the movement of your body. Listen to the sounds around you. You don't need to create a special spiritual experience. You are simply learning how to be present. You can also practice with nature. Look at a tree, look at a flower, look at the sky. For a few moments, don't immediately name what you are seeing. Don't turn it into a concept. Don't think, this is a tree, this is a beautiful flower, this is the sky. Simply observe, see, listen, experience. The purpose is not to stop thinking permanently. The purpose is to become aware of the mind's tendency to label, interpret, compare, and judge everything. And slowly, you begin to recognize something fascinating. Awareness can be practiced during every emotional state, not only during peace. If someone mildly irritates you, observe it. If something makes you happy, observe that too. If you feel excitement, notice it. If you experience disappointment, notice that. Even intense joy can be observed. Because awareness is not only about watching negative emotions. It is about becoming conscious of the entire movement of your inner world. And now, begin identifying your personal triggers. Ask yourself, what situations repeatedly disturb my peace? Which thoughts create fear inside me? Which people immediately make me defensive? What kind of words trigger anger? What situations create insecurity? What memories continue to influence my reactions? Don't ask these questions to blame yourself. Ask them to understand yourself. Because when you understand your triggers, you can begin recognizing the pattern before it completely takes over. And gradually, something begins to change. The same situation appears, but your response is different. The same person speaks, but you don't immediately react. The same thought enters your mind, but you don't automatically believe it. The emotion rises, but you remain present. This is what inner freedom begins to look like. Freedom does not necessarily mean living without emotions. It means that emotions are no longer making every decision for you. You can experience anger without becoming destructive. You can experience fear without allowing it to control every choice. You can experience desire without becoming its slave. You can experience sadness without losing yourself inside it. You begin to understand that an emotion is an experience passing through consciousness. It is not your entire identity. And this is perhaps the most important shift of all. Instead of saying, I am angry, you begin to notice. Anger is present. Instead of saying, I am afraid, you recognize. Fear is arising. There is a subtle difference between these two statements. But that difference can transform the way you relate to your inner world. Because when you say, I am anger, there is complete identification. But when you see, anger is present, there is observation. And observation creates space. In that space, you can breathe. You can pause. You can understand. And you can choose. The old subconscious pattern may have been running for years. So don't expect it to disappear overnight. Awareness is not a switch. It is a practice. Every time you notice a reaction, you are strengthening awareness. Every time you pause before responding, you are weakening automaticity. Every time you observe an emotion without immediately acting on it, you are creating a little more freedom. And eventually, the goal is not to become someone who never feels anger, never experiences fear, or never becomes disturbed. The goal is something much deeper. To remain conscious while life is happening. To see the movement of the mind without being completely carried away by it. To recognize the emotion without becoming the emotion. To experience the thought without automatically becoming the thought. And to meet every situation with awareness rather than simply repeating the past. Because the moment awareness enters, the old pattern is no longer completely unconscious. And when unconscious patterns become conscious, they begin to lose their power. Emotions will still come, thoughts will still come, life will still challenge you. But you will no longer have to surrender your inner world to every emotion that knocks on the door. You can observe, you can pause, you can choose, and slowly, the person who was once controlled by their emotions begins to become the one who observes them. That is where real inner freedom begins.